So friends, given some new reporting, we just learned that President Biden is poised to make an announcement about trying to deal with the rot at the top, trying to fix what's broken on the Supreme Court. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, I read with great interest today the Washington Post reporting about how the Biden administration is going to try to repair a damaged, degraded, flat-out dishonest Supreme Court. How to deal with the corruption on the court. How to address the rot at the top. And as we read through some of this Washington Post article, I'm going to ask you to put a pin in not just one, but two passages, and then we're going to circle back and talk about those two passages on the other side. But let's start with this new Washington Post reporting. Headline, Biden set to announce support for major Supreme Court changes. And that article begins, President Biden is finalizing plans to endorse major changes to the Supreme Court in the coming weeks, including proposals for legislation to establish term limits for the justices and an enforceable ethics code, according to two people briefed on the plans. He's also weighing whether to call for a constitutional amendment to eliminate broad immunity for presidents and other constitutional office holders, the people said, speaking on the condition of anonymity to discuss private deliberations. The announcement would mark a major shift for Biden, a former chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee who has long resisted calls to make substantive changes to the High Court. The potential changes come in response to growing outrage among his supporters. Pin number one, friends. The changes come in response to growing outrage from his, President Biden's, supporters about recent ethics scandals surrounding Justice Clarence Thomas and decisions by the new court majority that have changed legal precedent on issues including abortion and federal regulatory powers. Biden previewed the shift in a Zoom call Saturday with the Congressional Progressive Caucus. This quote from the president, I'm going to need your help on the Supreme Court because I'm about to come out. I don't want to prematurely announce it, but I'm about to come out with a major initiative on limiting the court. I've been working with constitutional scholars for the past 3 months, and I need some help, Biden said, according to a transcript of the call obtained by the Washington Post. Term limits and an ethics code would be subject to congressional approval, which would face long odds in the Republican-controlled House and a slim Democratic majority in the Senate. Pin number two. This might be difficult to do, might face long odds. We're going to circle back to that, friends. Under current rules, passage in the Senate would require 60 votes. A constitutional amendment requires even more hurdles, including 2/3 support of both chambers or by a convention of 2/3 of the states and then approved by 3/4 of the state legislatures. The Supreme Court ruled that Trump was immune from prosecution for official acts during his first term in office, and less than an hour later, President Biden called Lawrence Tribe, a constitutional law professor at Harvard Law School, to discuss the ruling and the arguments for and against remaking the court. Another quote from the president. This decision today has continued the court's attack in recent years on a wide range of long-established legal principles in our nation, from gutting voting rights and civil rights to taking away a woman's right to choose, to today's decision that undermines the rule of law of this nation, President Biden said in public remarks later that day. Since President Biden was elected, the Supreme Court has veered sharply to the right, overturning Roe v. Wade, ending affirmative action in college admissions, weakening federal agencies' power by overturning a 40-year decision, and striking down Biden's student loan forgiveness program. And friends, can I make one addition to that list of horrific Supreme Court rulings? Remember, there was another case where the Supreme Court ruled, sanctioned, endorsed businesses discriminating against our LGBTQ plus friends, provided the businesses cloaked their discrimination in religious piety. My editorial addition. The article continues. Biden condemned the court's recent ruling on presidential immunity, arguing on July 1st that it should motivate Americans to vote for his reelection. Quote, "Each of us is equal before the law. No one is above the law, not even the President of the United States," Biden said in a White House address. With today's Supreme Court decision on presidential immunity, that fundamentally changed. It sure did fundamentally change. The radical right-wing bloc of the Supreme Court demoted our democracy to a monarchy. But let's circle back to the first pin. These Supreme Court fixes that will be proposed by President Biden, quote, come in response to growing outrage among his, President Biden's, supporters. But friends, it's not just President Biden's supporters who are sick of the rot at the top. You ready for it? Headline, Fox News poll, Supreme Court approval ratings drop to record low. And get a load of this passage. About 8 in 10 favor establishing a mandatory retirement age for Supreme Court justices, 81% favor, as well as limiting them to an 18-year term, 78% favor. Both numbers are up by double digits since July 2022, 71% and 66% respectively, shortly after the court overturned the landmark case Roe v. Wade. That's right, friends. A Fox News poll shows between 78 and 80% support for the kind of reforms Joe Biden is about to propose, and Donald Trump has already said he will fight against. Okay, friends, let's finish up with pin number 2. Term limits and an ethics code would be subject to congressional approval, which would face long odds in the Republican-controlled House and a slim Democratic majority in the Senate. Okay, friends, so what should the main takeaway be from the accurate assertion that fixing the rot at the top, dealing with corrupt Supreme Court justices, probably faces long odds with a House of Representatives that at the moment has a slim Republican majority, and in the Senate that has a slim Democrat majority? That means fixing what is broken on the Supreme Court faces long odds. I think the takeaway is we need to change the calculus in the House of Representatives and in the Senate if we want to fix the Supreme Court, if we want to stop a runaway imperial court from continuing to revoke our constitutional rights, from continuing to endorse, embrace, and thereby encourage discrimination. If we want to get America back on track, we know what we need to do. Put the House of Representatives back in the control of the Democrats and increase the majority in the Senate. How do we do that? we go to the polls in numbers too big to rig and too real to steal. And as I've been ending every Justice Matters video with recently, we are the final jury. We, the people, have been selected as jurors in the case of Donald Trump versus the United States of America. The Supreme Court has put him above the law and said there will be no more criminal trials between now and November 5th. The Supreme Court has the aspiring dictators back, but we have the vote, and we are the jury, the final jury, standing between Donald Trump and dictatorship. And all we need to do is go to the polls and vote up and down the ballot. But most importantly, vote Donald Trump guilty. That's how we need to cast our vote, not only as the American voters, but as the final jury that will judge Donald Trump for the crimes he's committed against the people of the United States of America. We will vote him guilty on November 5th, because we're not going to be a damn monarchy. We're going to remain a democracy, because justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe. Please stay tuned. And I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.